Mayor builds on WW2 veterans. Land they don't own. Cue revenge. Hi Reddit, I've got one gem of a story that my grandfather told me about his hometown after he came home from World War II. It has to do with a tree framer, a corrupt mayor, and over 20 homes getting bulldozed. Enjoy! At the end of World War II, thousands of troops were heading home, starting new families, and wanted to move out of the city. There was a major housing boom all around the county. People couldn't move out of the cities fast enough, and developers could not build homes fast enough. There was a ton of money to be made in the construction business, which led to some underhanded building practices. One such practice was starting construction before the land acquisition was finalized. Enter my grandfather, G. After serving as a pilot during the war, he came home to a very different town. When my G went off to fight in 1942, the town that he described leaving was tired and worn down. But to his amazement, the town he saw stepping off the train in 1948 was anything but. Newly paved roads, a traffic light, and new homes. New homes that just went on and on. He actually got lost on his way back to the family farm due to the new main town road being rerouted while he was away. But what took him by surprise the most was the new development being built on his childhood friend John's tree farm. This was surprising to him, mainly because he knew how much the farm meant to John and his family. The farm went back at least 2 generations. But my G just guessed that the developer made John's family an offer too good to refuse. However, that thought was shot down later that evening during his welcome home dinner back home. It was my great-grandmother who tipped him off that something was off. He couldn't recall exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of, "Oh, I just wish John was still alive to be here." My G nearly choked, not because of the news, but because John was not dead. He was still in Hawaii. My G had gotten a postcard from him not but 4 days before. Turns out while John was off in the Navy fighting in the Pacific Theater, John's dad had suffered a stroke and passed away, and his mother passed away less than a week later from a broken heart. More than likely, John was never informed of their passing, and now 20-plus homes were being built on their land. My G about ran out of the house, jumped in his father's Model T, and raced down into town to send one bombshell of a telegraph to John in Hawaii. "John, your folks passed. Farm now being built on. Come quick, G." My G never got a response back. He figures that John must have fainted from shock, then jumped up and ran to the Navy base to get on the first boat home. Because he was back home in less than 4 days, and he was mad. According to my G, when he burst through the doors of the mayor's office, everyone in the room looked like they were about to drop dead. The poor desk clerk was fumbling over his words, trying to talk to John. Then, the mayor came out of his office to see what all the commotion was about. As soon as he saw John, he went white as a sheet, then ran back into his office and locked the door. Getting nowhere at the mayor's office, John went to the next town over and hired a lawyer. What followed was a 7-year court case that ended in the mayor being sentenced to 8 years in jail and the developer going bankrupt. Turns out that after John's parents passed away, John wasn't able to be contacted for some reason and was just assumed dead. So, when an out-of-state developer wanted to build homes in the area, the mayor just permitted them to start building on John's farm for a hefty kickback, of course. Also, because of John's lawsuit, the developer couldn't finish the pre-sold homes, which ended up in more lawsuits. In the end, the mayor and the developer and the town ended up having to pay John close to $45,000 total, which is over $752,000 today. And then the farm had to be returned to its prior condition. To say John was happy would be a vast understatement. Today, John's tree farm is a nature reserve, and the story of the corrupted mayor is all but forgotten except for by a few locals. John passed away in 1999. My G has been back to his hometown a few times to visit his grave and to check on the old tree farm. On to story number 2. Neighbors from hell harass my sister and then get evicted and worse. January 2021, I, 30F, moved my camper van/mobile home closer to my sister's 26F flat to help her recover after a stay in hospital. She had been struggling and was not happy in life, so my goal was to care for her and raise her spirits while helping her organize and stabilize her life. I was shocked when on my first night there, I was woken at 4 a.m. by enraged screaming from her downstairs neighbor. The woman downstairs was mid-fight with her fella, and I distinctly heard a plate being thrown. I was shocked by how loud they were being, for it to be audible from outside their flat. It was very unsettling for both myself and my sister, as my sister and I have a lot of PTSD from growing up in an abusive household. In the morning, I asked my sister about it, and she said that was normal and that you can't say anything to them about it, or they will start on you. She goes on to explain that one time she had left a note asking them to keep it down, and the fella had come outside and banged loudly on her front door, trying to fight her. Bear in mind that this guy is 40 plus balding, 6 feet plus drunk, and she is a tiny thin 4 feet 11 lass with autism. This pissed me off big time, but not nearly as much as when sister admitted that one time she had been crying to herself in her flat, and the downstairs neighbor decided to call the police on her for it as revenge for asking them to keep it down. Naturally, I was completely done at this point. So, like any good admin lady, I got to work. I opened a complaint with the housing association and logged every incident of violent drunken behavior that took place. They, as expected, were reluctant to do anything at all and told me to just call the police if it got bad. I remember thinking to myself, I can't see us needing the police. But I was wrong. Some nights their fighting was so intense I had to anonymously call 101 and report the DV for her own safety. This, and the letters that started arriving from the housing association put me on their radar, and soon things got worse. They were in trouble for the noise, the state of their flat, fly tipping rubbish on the corner, an out-of-control dog that attacked my cat, threatening me, threatening sister, spitting on her door, trying to steal her cat, trying to run over my cat, banging on the door and making threats, playing loud music to keep sister awake on college nights, and so much more. The police started being called a lot, and it was getting so stressful. I was starting to regret making that first complaint. But the rest of the neighbors were on our side, as it affected them just as much. I felt supported by them, and decided to just keep pushing and demanding a solution. I knew eventually the council/housing association would cave in and either rehouse my sister, or, better yet, rehouse the neighbor. By autumn 2022, things had reached boiling point. I installed a Ring doorbell in January 2022 for parcel deliveries, but it ended up being the silver bullet that took the crazy woman down. A multi-agency meeting took place over Teams, and they finally upped the pressure on the neighbor after I presented my evidence to them. I remember crying after that meeting, as I left it feeling that they didn't think we had enough to push for an eviction. I was even criticized for having not called the police enough to support my harassment claim. But I gave them my flash drive full of reports anyway, and hoped they would at least look at them. Not all was lost, though. The neighbor's fella was told not to attend the property again, and the hope was to distance them, so she could get her life together. She had been given multiple welfare meetings to try and turn her behavior around, and they tried to support her by offering ways to dry out and pick her life up. They really tried to peacefully resolve the situation, and we were even asked to make some adjustments to help her see that we didn't despise her, and our reporting wasn't malicious. We just felt unsafe, and she was being loud, messy, and a nightmare neighbor. But this woman just didn't care. She continued to let her partner back at the flat, and they inevitably fought. The police were called twice in a 24-hour period, and I wasn't even the one to call. The shouting was so bad, another neighbor called them. After the police left on the second time, she took a small bag of stuff and left. Then, silence. Days went by and nobody saw or heard from either of them. After a week, I still waited with bated breath for the return of the crazy and all of her bullshit. But it never came. And now it never will. By week 3, we had started to relax, assuming she had finally gone to rehab or was drying out somewhere safe. Nobody on the street knew where she had gone, and it was uncommonly calm on the block. And then, I get the first call. Friday. It's the police, informing me that they have reviewed the mountain of evidence I provided and they are keen to go for a harassment charge all of a sudden. Now, anyone who has endured harassment will tell you how flipping hard it is to prove. So, I was happy we were finally being listened to. I was even praised for how detailed and professional the reports were. Hence why I should have put this in r/pro revenge. But wait, it's not over yet. We know full well that the housing association needed the harassment charge to get her removed from the property. So, without even being told, we knew what was coming next. She would likely be told she is being evicted, and our problems would all soon be over. Monday, I get a call telling me a flat is available on the block if I'm interested. They know my situation, and living outside in a transit van isn't ideal. I'm sent the paperwork to apply, and I'd fill it in. I'm at this point feeling bad. If I'm housed in her flat, I'd feel guilty for having been the force behind her removal. Yeah, I know. It's her own fault, but You can surely understand why I would feel so weird about it. So imagine how we felt when this happened. Tuesday, email from the lovely chap at the housing association asking if we had heard about neighbor. I misunderstood the email and thought they had asked if we had heard from her. And I emailed back explaining nobody had seen her in nearly a month. He replies, Adult Services reported to us this morning that neighbor had passed away last night. I start bawling. I cry, what have I done? That woman drove us absolutely mad, and she was a horrible person. But she did not deserve to die. I'd wished for the day when I'd see her being evicted. I had joked about sitting outside with a beer on the lawn. But not once had I considered she might die. While I'm not currently aware of how she passed away, I do know that on the Monday she'd been in a meeting with social services, police, and the housing association. They likely told her about the charge and her inevitable eviction. She and her scruffy fella seemed to have gone out and just took too much. I don't think it was sway slide, as the officer we had been dealing with came round on the Wednesday to tell us he was naturally dropping the charges. I expressed guilt, and he told me it was inevitable when that much drugs and alcohol are involved. I'm heartbroken. I know it's not the case, but it feels like this is my fault. I never thought for 1 second a woman as selfish and blind to the impact she had would let this happen to her. We have left flowers by her door, and for the first few nights after she passed I lit candles for her. I'm sad that she never took the help offered, because if she had stayed away from her fella and tried to slow down on the drink and drugs, she might have had a chance. Ultimately, I feel this is nuclear revenge, as rather than getting my sister's crazy neighbor evicted, I got her killed. And I feel terrible. Subscribe and like for more videos.